Well, if you've ever been to the cinema and you're anything like me, you've probably felt the frustration at how long you have to wait before the movie actually starts. It might be advertised to begin at 7:30 p.m, and so it's always a bit of a rush to make it on time with your popcorn and getting your drinks ready. But when you're finally seated, you actually discover that the movie doesn't actually begin for another 15 to 20 minutes anyway. And what are they showing you on the screen in the meantime? Well, they're showing you little previews of upcoming movies, little snippets of what is ultimately to come later. They're obviously hoping to entice you for you to come back later and see the movie in its fullness. And in many ways, the stories we read of in the Old Testament are much like these advertisements that you see in the cinema before a movie. They're little snippets, little previews pointing you forward, inviting you to come back and to see them in their fullness. And how do we see these stories in their fullness? Well, we look at them in light of the entire Bible story. We look at them through the lens of what we now know to be true in the person and work of Jesus Christ. In many ways, you and I are extremely privileged people. We live at a time where God's entire biblical story has been revealed to us through all the scriptures. We no longer just have to watch the previews, we get to see the full movie. And this is true in the case of Noah. Do you know that we actually have a greater, fuller understanding of what's happening in the story of Noah than even Noah himself did? Why? Because we see the Noah story in light of the entire Bible story. We can see that it is ultimately a preview pointing us forward to something and someone so much greater. It's pointing us to Jesus and to Jesus' work on the cross. Now I want you to notice just two ways in which the Noah story points us forward to Jesus. Firstly, it points us forward to Jesus in Noah himself. You see, Noah himself is a little preview of Christ. He gives us this little snapshot of Jesus. Sometimes when we talk about someone being a preview or a snapshot of someone else, it's called a type. Noah is a type of Christ. But in what way does Noah give us a little preview of Jesus? In what way is Noah a type of Jesus? Well, in a number of ways. Notice, for example, Noah's very name. His name means rest. Now that's a very fitting name, is it not? Because all who were with Noah found rest. In fact, what you notice about the flood narrative is that the whole way through chapters 6, 7, and 8 of Genesis, all the other family members of Noah are barely mentioned. In fact, there are 7 other people in the boat with him who are also rescued. Noah's wife, Noah's 3 sons, their wives. But they aren't described as the righteous ones. Noah is the one who's described as the righteous one. Yet it is through Noah, the righteous one, that all these other people will be saved. It's through their union with Noah, the righteous one, that they are spared from God's judgment. Because in the Old Testament, the waters of the sea are often the things that are described as an image of judgment. That's why at the end of your Bibles, in Revelation chapter 21, we're told that the new heavens and the new earth, there will be no sea there. It doesn't mean that there literally won't be any water. It's symbolically stating that there will be no more judgment. And so in the Noah story, we too have another example of how water is synonymous with judgment. God is judging the world through water. Yet those who were hidden with Noah, the righteous one, while the waters of judgment fell, well, they were saved from that judgment. And so it is for you and I in a greater sense, is it not? If you and I want to be saved from God's judgment, we need to be hidden with the righteous one. Not Noah, but the one Noah was pointing to, Jesus Christ. In fact, in the New Testament, when you read Colossians chapter 3, verse 3, Paul describes Christians as those who are hidden with Christ. And so Noah is this foreshadow of Jesus. He gives us a glimpse as to what Christ will be like. Those who are hidden with the righteous one, they find refuge. But what you should never forget is the fact that Noah is merely a foreshadow of Jesus, nothing more. Noah is not the hero of this story. In fact, Noah is just a human like you and I. He's not the ultimate righteous one, because straight after this amazing flood narrative, what does Noah do? We're told that he gets drunk. He humiliates himself. In other words, we should not see Noah as being immune to the fallenness of humanity. He's a picture of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, but he's merely that. As we read the Noah story, we still long for the real deal, Jesus Christ, the one who would come without any sin whatsoever. And so Noah points us forward to the person and work of Christ, but so does, secondly, the sign which God accompanies this rescue with, the rainbow. You see, what does God do after sparing Noah and those hidden with him? He sends a rainbow. Literally a bow in the sky. Now, what is a bow? It's a weapon. You and I know that today, but they would know it all the more back then because it was their primary weapon. They don't have things like guns. And so the sign that God gives as a message that he will never flood the earth again is a weapon in the sky, a bow. But notice what way the bow is facing. It's facing up. It's almost this imagery that God has laid down his weapons against humanity, but not just that, the weapon is faced in his direction. In other words, the means through which he will ultimately save humanity will be by he himself becoming the victim, by suffering himself, by having the weapons pointed in his direction. And isn't that exactly what would happen? Isn't that ultimately the means through which God would save the world and spare them from judgment? The means of God saving this world would be through God himself suffering in the person of Jesus. And so what is Noah and the Noah story ultimately about? It's not just a story about a boat and about animals going into an ark 2 by 2. It's not just a story about God's power to rescue. It's ultimately a story about Jesus Christ.